Hello, welcome again. Little bit different, little bit samey this time. Today I am going to be recording a podcast down with Squire Pat and Boggs, and to get myself into kind of the mood for what I'll be talking about, etc. I'm going to do another kind of playthrough of breaking the stigma that I'll be giving to them. This time, however, I've kind of dialed it back, so it's not got any of the fancy transitions or any of the fancy kind of stuff like animations and stuff in it, because what I realised is I was spending far too much time worrying about how the transitions worked rather than actually just giving the talk in its most heartfelt kind of way possible. And I felt it was distracting, really. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run it through blind, no prompts, no anything like that, and we're going to go from there and just see how it plays out. So there we go, it's back in. So to start with it, thank you all for having me here today. It's a great privilege to be here and speaking in front of you. One thing I do want to say before I start, as well as saying thank you to Squire Pat and Boggs, is also a special thank you to Daniela, who has organised all these events. And without events like this, what I'm trying to achieve through giving these talks would not be possible. So thank you very much for that, and I hope you enjoy the show. Right. So, I've always lived a life of two halves, really. So, I'm going to introduce both of them. So, I'm Andrew Solkeld. I'm a chartered accountant. I trained and qualified at PwC, a specialist in the corporate finance sector. Then I moved out into industry as a specialist in business intelligence and data analytics, and have now started working with a number of startups around Leeds to bring that kind of big business attitude down on a smaller scale. Okay, how'd that sound? Professional, exactly what you'd expect to hear? Well, here's the other side. I'm Andy. I'm, as I like to say, just another guy. I like board games. I live with my cat called Pika. Yes, she's named after a Pokemon. And she'll start appearing on screen soon as well, because she's fussing me. But I live with depression. I have been depressed most of my life, and in 2017 I almost took my own life. And those are the two sides. So why do we always say the first and never the second? Which one are you immediately connected to more? Is it the professional person, or is it the person who has just shared their most emotional secrets with you? This is why I do this, and it's because it really makes a difference when we're honest to each other, and we're honest from the start, because stronger relationships are built as a result. So before we kick off, I just want you to know about my book. I've got a book coming out next year, and it's absolutely incredible to be able to say that. I never thought I'd write a book. Being honest, I never thought I'd be here today. The book is called Life is a Four-Letter Word. It's a mental health survival guide for professionals based off my own experiences. You will hear some about it today, but in nowhere near the detail that I talk about it in the book. Reason I'm saying this up front is because no doubt I would want to just talk about it constantly, and I want to get it out the way first. So, back to breaking the stigma. As you'll have seen already, I am using memes in this presentation, and memes are, they've become culture now, and I'm so glad they're exempt from Article 13, because otherwise giving this presentation in a room full of lawyers would probably be my downfall. The reason I use memes is when I was first asked to give this presentation, I had no idea what to put behind me. I had no idea how to describe the things I went through, no idea how to describe what emotions I was feeling, and anything like that. So the only thing I could think of was trying to simplify it in the best way possible. And memes are simple, they're relatable. You can see what's going on in a picture and a few words. And mental health is an entirely personal subject. It's something that you can only experience yourself, and it will be completely different to everyone else. We all have our own inner critics, our own inner monologues, everything like that. And what I experience with living with depression will be different from someone else who lives with depression or lives with anxiety or has no diagnosed condition. And this way, I feel, makes it accessible to everyone. And that's why I choose to use memes. And they're pretty funny, and talking about life, death and misery would be pretty boring for like 30 minutes, 40 minutes if I didn't have something fun in here. So this is a slide I'm sure some people will resonate with. I'd like to think that I will come across quite confident, quite skilled at presenting. You might warm to me as a speaker, you might even warm to me as a person, but I'm not confident about being up here. Like, I don't even know how I've managed to get to where I am today. Like, I've written a book. It's coming out. I don't feel I have the authority to talk about what I talk about. I've just lived with it. I'm not confident about it at all. And I think it's important to say that, because I will come across as confident and as if I know what I'm talking about. And when I was in my darkest moments, and when I was thinking about how to almost end everything, no one expected it of me. Everyone thought I was fine. I wore my mask. I hid it under fake smiles, fake chauvinism, fake humour, fake enjoyment and fake laughter. Everything about me was fake, but no one could tell because I'd become so good at showing it that way. So when I did publish the article Breaking the Stigma, everyone was shocked, and that's why I do this. Even though I don't feel confident about it and I don't feel I have the authority to do it, there are people out there who will be struggling and who you won't necessarily know they're struggling. So understand that anyone, regardless of how happy they feel, regardless of how confident they look, please just bear in mind that that might only be surface level, and what's underneath could be something completely different. So, after our 3-4 intros, we're actually going to get into the meat of the topic. Just like Lord of the Rings and its 4 endings, here's our 4 beginnings over and done with. So, how many of you have ever been in this position? For me, it felt like it was every single day. Whilst I was never actually thrown out of a window, might have been a good option at times, having any form of social life felt like it was wrong. It felt like I wasn't living the life I was meant to when I was working in practice. There's times when I was on jobs and I was invited out for dinner, and I was told, "Oh, what, you're going out for dinner again? To celebrate your birthday? You already did that yesterday." "Oh, well, we'll pick up the slack for you." Talk about passive aggression to the maximum. I'm now being made to feel guilty for having a life outside work. And bear in mind that working longer hours and doing extra work is a choice. And if I make that choice, then that's fine. But you're not the one that gets to decide that for me. Yes, there's responsibilities, but I don't want to feel guilty for having a social life, or for doing exercise, or for having a child, or anything like that. But that's what happens. So I made the conscious decision to stop having a social life for a time, and that was so I could fit in with the cultural norm. Now, there's a couple of things about professional services, and they're quite hard to hear, but firstly, we're parasites. We live on the success and failure of other businesses, and without other businesses, we wouldn't have a company to work for, full stop. Everyone, no matter where you are in an organisation, you're replaceable. You have the value you have whilst you're there, but if someone else can do it better, then they can take your spot without question. We're also Darwinian. The strongest survive and the weakest fail, and the weakest don't last for long. What's the point of keeping overhead around if it's not generating the revenue and profit it's meant to? That is how our business works. So you adapt to being in that culture. Doesn't make it wrong, because bear in mind, some people like that sort of culture. It also doesn't make it right for each individual, and it's just important to know what's going on and where it's coming from. Now, I'm not an old boy. I don't know, well, I did play rugby, but I'm not a member of a rugby club. I don't watch football on weekends. I don't even know how to play golf. So I was never going to be part of the cultural norm. I value my individuality. I consider myself a generalist with a bit of a personality rather than a specialist, which is what we're taught we should be in in practice. But don't worry about it. When I say this, I do mean it. Don't worry about it. So what if there was a typo on a document that went to a client? Don't worry about it. What about a small rounding difference in an equity schedule for a deal that's just completed? Don't worry about it. How about only spending 2 hours reviewing a FTSE 100 listed client? Don't worry about it. It doesn't work like that, does it? We are not the sort of people that will not worry. We're people that strive to want to do well. And this isn't just professionals, this is everyone. Everyone wants to do a good job. We want to be recognised and to be successful. So when we're told not to worry about it, it doesn't help, because we are going to worry about it. We are going to care, and it is going to matter to us. The important thing is knowing where to limit that and knowing how to control how much we worry about it, because it is going to happen. And what happens, because we worry about these things, is we do a little bit extra from time and again. Now, as I mentioned before, we're a Darwinian culture. We strive to be the best. But how do we differentiate from our competition? It's normally through our people. But as I just said, our people can't be too different from the rest of us, because it might scare our clients away. So we can't differentiate on the quality of our work, because that's assumed. And it just is. What is produced here for a legally binding document will be the same as what's produced down the road or down the other road, whatever. Quality is assumed. Our people, whilst they are different and make our organisation, they can't be too different. Also, we're not very likely to adjust our prices. Let's just be honest about this. We're professional services. We charge a lot of money, and people aren't going to. They're not going to value the service unless they're paying that sort of money. So how do we differentiate? And this is where the bullshit really kicks in. We strive to put clear blue water between ourselves and the competition by putting ourselves in our client's shoes, and insert any other like platitude that goes with this. We believe in velocity because it's more than just distance over time. Yeah, of course it is. There's a there's a direction attached to it. But what happens is we'll start thinking outside the box. We'll start considering alternatives and start trying to give that little bit extra. What it actually means is we're just going to do more work and not charge you for it. And that is not that's not a measurable reason for success. But we still do it. And again, it's not wrong, but we need to be aware that we're actually doing this and it is extra. I have spent so many hours over contemplating a question that could have been answered in just a few simple lines of text. But no, I would spend days thinking about what goes on, how it fits into the bigger picture, when actually they just want a really simple yes or no. But so we finish all the extra work we're doing. We may we don't get to do it when we want, but we can do what we want when we finally get home. Or we can spend the entire day worrying, or entire evening worrying about what went on during the day and whether we made the right choice, whether we said the right thing, how could it be interpreted. We're taught to think around these things and to try and predict and anticipate what could happen. So obviously we're going to try and predict and anticipate what someone responding to us is going to think. And then the phone buzzes. Oh, don't suppose you noticed the typo on page 15. Connectivity is brilliant. Connectivity with mobile phones and email and internet is brilliant. Don't get me wrong. But it stops us being able to switch off properly. The only hour in the day when I have not received communication from a partner or a director or someone I've been working for is between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. Every other hour, I have received something at some point in my career. I don't know what's going on then, but that's your rest hour. So make sure you take it. And when we're working so hard, when we're doing so much and it becomes expected, we stop necessarily giving or receiving compliments very well. Now, I know this particularly well because I'm really bad at receiving compliments. I just am. So when someone says something like this to me, thank you for your hard work, my response is, do they actually think I worked hard? Do they think the task was easy but I made it hard? Do they think I don't work hard the rest of the time? What about the other tasks? Were they hard or was it actually easy? Is it just sarcasm? Do they even mean this? Here's another one, if we take it outside the work context, that so many people have such a hard time dealing with. You are beautiful. Okay? Oh, do they think I'm just beautiful today because I'm wearing this makeup? Is it the makeup that makes me beautiful? Am I not beautiful the rest of the time? Do they actually think I'm not beautiful but need to hear it because I'm a weak individual? Are they hitting on me? No. Just, it's a compliment. It's saying something nice. If I say you're beautiful, I mean you're beautiful. Don't stop turning things down. Start accepting what people say. So here is the first point of a few for today that I'd really like you to take away with you. But who knows? That's up to you. Say thank you if someone does something good. Say thank you even if they do something bad. But say thank you because even though we are paid well and we receive the reward for doing the job we do, that doesn't mean that we feel valued in doing what we're doing. And feeling valued as an individual is incredibly important to keep us going. Now, here's where I started taking things a little bit too far. And I recognise it, but just understand that this is where it can get to when work takes over and you're thinking outside the box and anticipations go that little bit further. I started questioning whether my friends and family actually like me. Do my friends like me because I'm always willing and able to get the round of drinks? I always think about them and get them little presents here and there, and because I can? Is it just easier to stay friends now because of time rather than actually just saying, you know what, we're not really that close friends or anything like that? And then with family, I know my family love me. I do. Like, they have cared for me for so long. But do they like me as a person? Do they respect what I do? I mean, I'm an accountant, or I was an accountant, or maybe I'm not. But do they actually respect the fact that I'm stood up here giving this talk today? We don't watch. They love watching football. I don't. We seem to pass each other like ships in the night most of the time, where it's a fleeting conversation over a dinner and then poof, away we go. I know they love me and they'll be there for me, but it started making me question like how much I was valued by them. And that's not fine. That's not okay. My Chemical Romance were right when they sung about it. If you're not doing well, say. If you're not feeling fine, say. And if you're not okay, stop lying about it and just say. Because, and this is point 2, so soon after point 1, that took me almost 25 years in the learning. Because if you're not saying you're not okay, then things can get a lot worse. Particularly here. Now, breathe it in. Understand that this is exactly where I was. I started turning my back on my friends, my family, my loved ones, everyone I cared about. The pain was taking over. I was beginning to feel the numbness that comes with depression, as I'll talk about soon. And all I wanted was to rest. And the only way to seemingly rest was through ending it all. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what depression, anxiety, and mental health mean to me, how everything happened in my life, and how I've kind of turned it around, how I'm still here, how I've managed to write a book on the subject as well, because, I mean, that's just a bit unreal. I've told you I'm writing a book, right? So, I have depression. I was diagnosed with depression roughly 5 years ago, maybe more, but in looking back, it's been part of my life for a long time. I can see the roots of it going back all the way through to my teenage years. And one important thing to note is depression, mental health in general, isn't about just woe is me, Disney princess style, throwing yourself on a rock of sadness. It's not that. Depression can actually just be a chemical imbalance in your brain. And you have no control over that. It's just nature. Yes, you can change it, you can take drugs to affect it, but sometimes it's just part of you. And I've come to accept that's part of me. Now, one of the things that that's important to also realise is that what took me from just living with depression to suicidal thoughts is a trigger experience. And that trigger was my wife leaving me to live a life as a lesbian. And that was incredibly hard for me. I remember vividly to this day that when she came into the kitchen whilst I was cooking, It was a great meal. It was pesto pine nut and halloumi pasta. Absolutely amazing. Was doing it all for the both of us. And she came in and said, look, I've been thinking about it. I don't think it's going to work. And I think it's like 80-90% certain it's over. And at that point, I pretty much collapsed into a ball of nothing. And I missed my best friend's daughter's naming day, where I was meant to talk. But I was just feeling I just couldn't keep going. Now, it's important to also remember that my ex-wife still cared about me. She looked after me, but we knew it was going to end. And in that moment, in that instant, everything was gone. And it wasn't just my life as a husband and my wife that was gone. It was the home that we'd spent 4 to 5 years building and renovating together. That'd have to be sold. We had 2 cats that were brilliant, Sky and Roxy. They were going to have to go because we were going to have to move out of the house. We were going to grow old together. That life of growing old together and sharing all that was gone. We were going to have kids. We were trying to have kids. The 2 little daughters that I dreamed about having, they were also gone. And everything in that moment was gone. Like that. And so when I specifically talk about depression, I always describe it as a very heavy and empty numbness. It doesn't just take all the happiness away. It doesn't just make you feel sad. It takes all of it away. All the happy, all the sad, everything is gone until all that's left is numb. You don't feel anything. And feeling is what makes us human. And so you start thinking that you're not human anymore. Now, just to kind of clarify, Deborah and my ex-wife and my divorce has now finished. We didn't use lawyers, no money for you, but we did get through everything, and we're actually on quite good terms now. I've had to speak to her a lot about publishing the book, because obviously I mentioned a lot about what went on between us in there, and she's happy with it, and I'm really pleased for her being able to live her life true to herself, and she's really pleased for me to be able to live my life and be true to myself, and to actually start making a positive difference in the world rather than just being a dick. So yeah, it was hard at the time, but swings and roundabouts. So back to the almost ending it all. Here is where I got to in my choices. I knew I wanted it to end. I knew I wanted that numbness to go away. I just didn't know how to do it. So I did what all people do. I researched it on the internet. For those interested, I settled on the former. Why? Because I was too ashamed to go outside. I was too anxious to be around people because I was worried that I might get talked down, or that I might, or that I would leave a mess for others to tidy up and to traumatize them. And I didn't want anyone else affected by this. I wanted it to end because I wanted other people to stop being concerned about me. It's important to say here that when these choices happen, when you reach this point, it isn't a quick decision. Many people think or talk about how it's a rash decision, it's a fast decision, and it just, it's such a waste. But when you get to this point, you've spent a long time thinking about it. You spend hours, days, weeks, months, years fighting to keep going. And it's only when you've got nothing left to fight for, when there's nothing else there, do you actually reach this decision and where it is. So I did my research. I worked out how many belts I'd need to support my weight from a point in the house. I calculated I needed 2. I worked out the safest place to do it from to give minimum risk of non-failure, because I mean, being a failure at everything else in my life, I certainly don't want to be a failure at this. But obviously I'm here today. I'm here and I'm talking about this, so something must have happened. So, and this is where it all kind of turned round. And it's not about something big. It's not about everyone or everything around me, you, whoever it is. It's the small things. Now, I apologise for not being able to remember this picture perfectly. I was a little preoccupied with trying to kill myself. But basically, after I'd checked around to make sure I had no reason to stay, and I was preparing everything, walking into the bedroom, the marital bedroom, to get those belts to end everything, I heard a buzz or a beep, or basically I got a message, and I was like, oh okay, I'll just check this. I'll give it a go. It's just a message from my best friend from university, and it simply said something along the lines of, "You still good for the pub next week, next month," or whenever it was that we'd agreed. Now, just to be clear, she, my best friend, she and I have been friends for longer than I'd known my ex-wife, and she'd been through her own shit the year before, and like, don't worry, I definitely win the baggage challenge here. Lesbian ex-wife trumps most things, but still, when you're at your lowest low, when you have nothing and think of nothing, and someone else who has also been at their lowest low just still wants to see you, it makes you realize that even though you don't value yourself, other people do. And then I kind of heard in her voice, "You selfish bugger. There are those of us round here that need you." Now, I can't do a Wiltshire accent for this, but if you've heard it, you'll know it. And yeah, and then I was just like, yeah, of course I'm good for it. I'll see you then, or whatever was said. Again, preoccupied trying to kill myself. Don't remember it very well. And then I realised that I don't want to feel like this. I actually don't want to have these feelings or thoughts in me. But not only that, I don't want other people to have these feelings and these thoughts. And how can I help them? How can I stop them? So I decided to make some changes. And the first thing I realised was I can't really worry about the future and what happens in it, because I almost didn't have one. I almost took it all away. So whatever I do now, I have to do in complete freedom. I have to just accept what happens and let it be. So it started out small. It started out with me playing video games on and streaming them on Twitch. People used to pay subscriptions and watch me, and we had communities, and I started talking about it being a safe place where people could come and talk about their mental health and their problems and just share openly, and it was received incredibly well. I then went a step further as part of this, and I said, hey, look, if we can raise over, I think it was £500 for charity, I would get my first tattoo. As you'll see, I have quite a lot of them now. But the important thing to note here is I fucking hate needles. And that will seem strange, but I'm also the guy who has had fillings done without anaesthetic because I hate needles that much. So me saying this was actually quite a big deal. Now, we didn't reach the target, but I thought, oh, you know what? I'm still going to do it anyway. The internet is a horrific place, and if you say you'll do bad things to yourself, they'll probably support you in doing it. So I started off and I got a tattoo. Then a couple of months later, was it months? Yeah, it's about 6 months later, I decided I wanted to do something big as part of streaming. I decided that I wanted to do a 24-hour stream for charity to raise money for mental health. And that seemed like a great idea. And it wasn't, but what happened was I decided that I would let my professional network know via LinkedIn. So I wrote an article called Breaking the Stigma. Thousands of views, hundreds of likes, shares across the world. It went as viral as it could do from just some guy in Leeds writing some nonsense on a blog that he has. And I basically stood there and said, hi, this is going to be an emotional one, but read it or don't, the choice is yours. My name is Andy Solkeld. I live with depression, and a year ago I almost killed myself. And I've never told you about this, and you probably never knew I lived with depression, but here's my story. And that same day, bear in mind I'm getting ready for a 24-hour stream where I'm not going to sleep, I started receiving emails and phone calls and people asking me to talk and to share my story personally. Now, here's a new slide for this. This is what I thought was going to happen. This is exactly what I imagine most people in this room are worried about if they mention that they're stressed, or if they suffer from anxiety, or if they have depression. Most people consider mentioning these things as a death knell to their career, when actually for me it opened up my career more than I ever thought possible. Yeah, it's a bit different. I'm not a run-of-the-mill accountant or finance director anymore. I give talks, I write books. I've told you about that, right? But people choose to work with me. People are inspired to work with me and want to be involved in what I'm doing because they say it makes a difference. I still don't believe it, but I know from what I've done and from what people have said to me in person that by giving these talks, by writing my blogs, by doing all of that, I've saved 5 lives. And yeah, net positive now, at least. So I'm going to continue doing it. And it all started in fact, it was a year ago today I gave the first Breaking the Stigma talk, which is surreal to say what's happened in 1 year. I've given this talk almost 15 times now, over 30 times if you count when I've done it live online or in the published videos and so on. I've written a book on it. I've been invited to talk in other places. I've done guest blogs. Everything in my life has changed because I spoke openly. I've received more external, don't know how to phrase this, more job offers without me asking for them than I have ever before. All because I was willing to share my story. So, to come towards the end of the day, sorry, I need coffee, need to keep going. It's cold, great. This is something that came to my mind in just one of the things I realised. Life is unfair. Our society has lied to us. Disney has lied to us. There are no universal scales out there. Happiness isn't going to just come from hard work. It's not. We may strive our utmost, put in blood, sweat, tears, and feel we deserve the happy ending or the happily ever after that every Disney princess or prince gets. But sadly, that's not always the case. Sometimes you work hard and you live a lonely life, die alone, and blend into the entropy that slowly consumes the universe. Pretty bleak, I know, but it can happen. But knowing life is unfair, and that there are no scales, and that there is no universal balance system that says, oh, that guy's had X much crap go on in his life, he therefore deserves this much good, or oh, that girl's on an upward streak, better bring her down a bit now. Pride doesn't always come before a fall. These things aren't always true. But knowing that, and knowing that life is unfair, is actually strong. Because what it means is, whatever's going on right now in your life, on the grand scheme of things, may not affect tomorrow. Whatever went on in your life shouldn't really impact today. What matters is making the most of every day you have now. And if right now things are really bad, things are really shit, you don't know that tomorrow's just going to be a shit. You don't know if it's going to turn around and everything's going to be on its head and something is going to change. You can't know that. So maybe it's worth just hanging in there one more day to see what happened. Take it one day at a time. Make it through one day at a time, because you just don't know when it's going to flip round. And with all this, the importance of everything I've talked about, and this is going to be the final point for today, is everything. Your happiness, your well-being, your mental health, your physical health, everything starts with you. You don't have to stand in front of an audience and tell your story and how you were suicidal. You don't have to have your life tattooed on your arm to show and remind you about where you find your happiness. You don't have to write a book on these things. You just have to find your own happiness. Look after yourself. Tell your inner critic to shut the fuck up when it's too loud. Just take control. But also, in knowing you're taking control, and whilst mental health is an individual journey, and it's yours and yours alone, that doesn't mean you have to go through it by yourself. No one does. And that is the point I want you to take away today. So, as always, we do an Ask Me Anything at the end of these things. Yes, this is very much internet style. You can literally ask me anything. However, no one ever wants to ask really weird and uncomfortable questions. They all just stick to very boring and bland stuff. But I'll leave that over to you. And then finally, somewhere through, yep, this is still true. And yes, I can finally talk about my book, and I'm willing to also answer any questions on that. And that's the end of the presentation piece. So we'll just take that down. And yeah, so that is Breaking the Stigma. I noticed as I was going through it this time, I missed some points out. But also at the same time, it felt very natural in what I was saying. Like there were certain things that I didn't say, but it's how much they made a difference. So let me know what you think about that version, whether it's better, worse, whether that some of the content I missed was important. Either way, it'd be great to have your feedback. I'm giving these talks in a little over a month now, so any input would be much appreciated. Thank you very much, and I will speak to you soon.